Hello. In this clip from our Justia webinar, Ethical Evolution, Thriving at the Crossroads of Law and Business in the AI Era, Tom Shack will introduce legal ethics while reviewing some ABA model rules, and will walk through the difference between morality and ethics. Remember, if you want to see more Justia videos on law practice and legal marketing, be sure to subscribe to our channel.
Thanks, Nina. I am so glad to be here with everybody today, and I'm going to start sharing my screen right away so that we can get right into the presentation. Just give me 2 seconds. Okay. All right. As we said, we're going to talk today about the ethical evolution and thriving at the crossroads of law and business in the AI era. When I do these types of presentations, I typically just, they're very kind of conversational, although the one-sided conversational, of course, as a law professor, that's usually the case. But in any event, please, feel free to reach out to me after this. My email's at the bottom of the screen. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, or if you're interested in, chatting about what's happening in Massachusetts or Boston, we are more than happy to accommodate. That said, we are in fact in a new era, and that new era is changing daily relative to the ethics of law and business as it relates to artificial intelligence. So first, we're going to go over a little bit of a primer. This is for the CLE portion, really, but a primer on legal ethics. So we're going to discuss and review several rules, and we're going to bring them into my presentation in a number of different ways today. But the questions that I'm going to be asking, by the way, throughout this, there'll probably be 3 or 4 questions that I ask you to really consider. We're not going to do a poll because it's more beneficial for you to think about what your answer would be to those questions and why. So as we're going through, we're going to be discussing Rule 5.3, Rule 1.1, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, and 1.6. And remember, this is not a comprehensive review. I mean, this isn't like you're, preparing for the ethics portion of the bar exam. It really is just a reminder and some consideration to take into or to think about as you are interacting and starting to evolve within our new legal AI environment. And again, if you lack any understanding or if you have any questions about that, you're welcome to reach out to me. But also, there's a link on this slide when you receive the slides. It will give you the access to the rules that we're discussing. So that will get started. All right. So first, we're going to talk about Model Rule 5.3, and the reason that we're taking the ABA model rules out of order is that this rule really impacts professionals and particularly legal professionals. And we're starting to see that right at the outset, again, of the use of AI within, practices across the globe, really. So it's very important to understand that under Model Rule 5.3, if an attorney works with a non-attorney to instruct or assist when using an AI tool, the attorney must ensure compliance with ABA Model Rule 5.3, which imposes a duty to supervise non-lawyer assistants. All right, so that's a mouthful, but what does it really mean? It really means that as supervising attorneys, and if you are a supervising attorney, you have an obligation to stand by and supervise all of your staff, the people that you work with on a daily basis who are non-lawyers, right? Well, the same is true with AI. AI is no different. If you're whoever you're going to or whatever you're going to rely upon from a non-attorney or non-barred standpoint, you have to take into consideration this rule. And part of the reason why this is so important is you're starting to see, and we've seen a few kind of early cases of attorneys who have used AI. They've gone, to prepare a motion or a brief. They go into court or submit it to the court, and then it turns out that the AI system they were using actually made up cases. We're still in the Wild West as it relates to that issue. So by all means, just make sure that you understand you are responsible for every single word that you utilize from an AI system. And, and I would be very, very cautious, and I'd caution you, particularly within your jurisdiction, to figure out what those limitations are, and to make sure that you're not only in compliance with the model rule, but also you're making sure that you're representing to your best interest, or keeping your client's best interest in mind. So, next thing, we're going to talk a little bit. Again, this is as a primer. We're going to talk a little bit today, initially about morality versus ethics, because there's these two often get mixed up, but they're very, very distinct. And for those of you that already understand this, no problem at all. That it will be over in just a few minutes. But as it relates to those folks who aren't aware of the difference between morality and ethics, the two are quite distinct. Morality comes from the Latin mores, which usually refers to any aspect of human action, right? So, and typically, morality is doing good with regard to any aspect of human action. On the other hand, ethics comes from the Greek ethos, and also commonly refers to the acts associated with morals. So, sounds a little bit technical, but it's really, pretty simple. And that is that morality is the base on which, if you think of a pyramid, morality is the base of the pyramid, and then ethics, and particularly professional ethics, are layered on top in different ways, up to the point where, again, for us as lawyers, we're self-regulated. So there's, very significant implications for us to act immorally, or to not understand that morality is sort of the keystone of ethics. So just to wrap that up, morals define personal character, while ethics stress a social system in which these morals are applied. Now, this is something that I typically use in one of my classes, when I'm teaching law students. But I think it's, I've used it professionally, and I think it really is appropriate here. So we want to think about that. We want to think about the personal character aspects of morality versus the social system or the structure that's put around those morals by the professional association, in our case, by our local bars, our state bars, or the American Bar Association. So moving on to ABA model rule 1.1, be competent. That's it sounds like a pretty good idea. And the rule holds the lawyer shall provide competent representation to a client. Competent representation requires the legal knowledge, skill, thoroughness, and preparation reasonably necessary for the representation, right? So again, if you're thinking about the concept of AI as it relates to this, you have to be very, very cautious about relying upon an incompetent AI source, and there are lots of them. Because I teach and I research in this area, it's really important to understand that many of the systems that call themselves legal AI are anything but, and a lot of times they've been cobbled together very quickly just to get a product out on the market. So just keep in mind that your thoroughness and preparation includes making sure that the systems that you're going to use, or the AI systems in particular, are going to be checked for competency by you. And and again, if I'm signing a document or you're signing a document as an attorney, that you'd better hope that that you have taken these things into consideration. All right. Because we discussed a little bit about the difference between morals and ethics, I always like to use a simple moral dilemma at the outset of a discussion. And in this case, you're just a lawyer walking past a large pond on a nice day, and suddenly you hear splashing and you see a toddler alone struggling in the water several yards from shore. You run to the shore, intending to jump in to save the child. But at the waterfront, you realize that you're wearing your brand new $1,000 Air Jordans. So do you stop and take off your shoes or jump right in? I know that, so the reason that this is a moral dilemma is because it balances, we're balancing the needs of protecting humans against protecting property. And, and when we use this in classroom settings, it's almost always, 80 or 90% typically that say that they're going to jump right in. They're not going to worry about their shoes. But the reason that we talk about this is because it's important to understand the perspective of morality as opposed to ethics, which we'll get into another scenario with a combination of the two. So keeping all of that in mind, you want to think to yourself about what you would do under those circumstances. It's not that, there's a right answer and a wrong answer, or that one person's a good person and one person's a bad person. It's just it's just that little voice in the back of your head. What is that little voice telling you? So now we can talk a little bit more about where ethics and morality meet. And we'll talk very briefly about some life and death decisions, because ethics and morality tie in very, very well in this particular area. So I go to my doctor, who happens to have an office at a local hospital here in Boston. I go to my doctor for my annual checkup, and again, in a hospital setting, he gives me great news. I'm in perfect shape. So my organs are all great. My blood pressure is great. My sight is great. Everything's working, terrifically. And what's interesting about that is that the doctor then says to me, oh, and by the way, we have 5 patients in the next room who need healthy organs, and without them, they're going to die. You have those healthy organs, Tom, and we think it would be a much better idea for us to take your organs and save the lives of the 5 people in the other room at the expense of your life, right? Sort of a parade of the horribles, an absurd example, but you have to think about the connection there. When that doctor is talking to me, there's both a moral question and the ethics that sit on top of the morals that have to be, answered by that doctor. Now, medical doctors and other types of doctors typically have to take a Hippocratic oath, meaning, to do no harm. It's just first do no harm. So, we can ignore that issue for the moment and just say, just think about it as a life and death decision. But for just a moment, think about what your answer, why your answer would be, yes, we should, harvest Tom's organs and save the lives of the people in the other room, or no, unfortunately, we can't. Those questions are questions of morality. And, and again, that's the base, and ethics are built on top of it. So again, just an example for you to consider. So what are ethics specifically? Well, ethics are a standard of conduct, and they indicate how we as lawyers should behave, based upon principles of right and wrong, right? So that example we just used, or the example of the toddler in the lake, or the doctor's example, we really want to understand what are those ethics, and where does ethics start, and where do morals stop? But you can boil most morality down to doing good and avoiding evil, or between right and wrong. Now, your perspective on what is right and what is wrong has to do with everything in your background, your education, your upbringing, your socioeconomic status, the advantages or disadvantages that you've had along the way. So generally speaking, there are areas that we, believe are right as a society, and we believe are wrong as a society. Well, as a practical matter, ethics now is how we meet the challenge of doing good or doing the right thing. And that leads us to model rule 1.3, and that's diligence, right? And this kind of goes back to that first issue with rule 5.3 and our AI research. So under rule 1.3, a lawyer shall act with reasonable diligence and promptness in representing a client. Now, what does that mean? I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to, have your mobile phone on your hip 24/7 and be available, in the middle of the night necessarily. I mean, it might be that you need to be available during the night, during the middle of the night, but you have to make sure that, that you're working diligently and promptly in representing a client, and that's a real struggle, right, for us as attorneys, and particularly those of us who have smaller law practices. If when you're in a position where you're representing a lot of clients and you're a sole practitioner, or maybe there's two practitioners and an assistant or a paralegal, in those situations, you got to be really, really aware of the fact that when those calls come in, you have to get back to these clients. I mean, and that trickiness that comes from this is, we also need to make a living, right? And so, we have to, we bring in the amount of cases that we can reasonably handle, and that we can continue to be diligent and prompt with. So for those purposes, just think of the fact that you're getting back to people, and your promptness in responding is almost always the largest aspect of where a client attorney relationship fails. So just keep that in mind.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more law practice and legal marketing videos. See you in our next clip.